Hi, I'm Satori Shakur, and here's what's coming up on One Detroit Arts and Culture. This month, the city of Detroit commemorates the 40th anniversary of Vincent Chin's murder, a hate crime that ignited the modern Asian American civil rights movement. We look at an artist inspired by the story, plus the legacy of Vincent Chin told through a powerful documentary. It's all this week on One Detroit Arts and Culture.
Support for this program provided in part by the Kresge Foundation, the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV. From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Gregory Haynes and Richard Sonenklar. Nissan Foundation. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome to One Detroit Arts and Culture. I'm your host, Satori Shakur. Thanks for joining me here at Anthony Lee's Artist Studio. He's creating this stunning mural of Vincent Chin that will be displayed at Peterborough and Cass in what used to be Detroit's Chinatown. Tonight's show is all about honoring and learning about Chin and his legacy. It's been 40 years since his death put Detroit in the national headlines. Chin, a Chinese American, was killed when anti-Asian sentiment was on the rise, as the automakers were losing market share to Japanese imports. Artist Anthony Lee was asked to create a mural to honor Chin. One Detroit's Bill Kubota has more on the creation of this piece.
What I'm trying to do is build the layers. Right now all these are under layers until all the food is really glistening and really popping out, looking super juicy and fresh.
Anthony Lee is finishing this piece of public art to be installed in what was Detroit's Chinatown later this month.
When people even talk about Chinatown, a lot of people, especially Chinese people, kind of just like, what's the point? Why do you even waste your time there? And I didn't understand where that mentality came from until later on. I just realized there was a lot of trauma, and Vincent Chin, his case was one of the last straws that really added to that trauma, you know.
A tribute to Vincent Chin, killed in 1982, a case of anti-Asian hate. 40 years later, a key piece of Asian American history.
I'm an illustrator, signage painter, but I'm primarily a muralist. I like large-scale drawing and getting things really big, but I also like working with businesses, local restaurants, cafes, nonprofits to kind of activate their spaces.
Lee's work all around Metro Detroit, some with Asian themes, others not.
I spent like 6 years at the College of Creative Studies trying to find what was my thing. In my senior thesis, they're like, all right, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I want to mural paint. And they're like, great. Well, none of us teach that, so good luck. But it was cool. I had a professor named Gilda Snowden. She's a really famous artist in the Cass Corridor. She just said, just keep making art until something happens. And then she knew that I was looking for something. Someone had given her a mural commission for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Detroit, and she passed it on to me. But she said, like, how we do things in Detroit, though, like, if someone passes you a gig, you have to see it through. Will you see it through? And I was nervous because I had never painted large-scale anything before. Growing up in the Detroit area, there wasn't a lot of Asian American artists. You know, I've always wanted to be a part of like a group or like not just a group, but just like have like a community that we could like support and reach out to each other kind of thing, just like the original Cass Corridor artists. And I was wondering why that wasn't there.
That Cass Corridor group goes back 5 or 6 decades. Now, how about an Asian American artist collaborative? Lee's got some plans while at a studio in Southwest Detroit. Some are starting to get together.
I'm always trying to find other dope Asian artists anywhere.
Art curator Shingo Brown's running what he calls Art Buddies. The creators all AAPIs.
For Art Buddies, it's been an evolution. Right now, I invite an X amount of artists. It's grown to about 25 artists. They all have the same size frame. There's no theme. They come in and start and finish a piece within 2 hours. Throughout the past couple of years, I've been able to speak with these people who are not sure. All they really need is some type of confirmation that they are objectively, technically skilled as an artist. They just need someone to be like, that's really good, you should make more.
Art by Asian Americans. So then, Asian American art. In the spotlight soon, Anthony Lee's Vincent Chin tribute, part of the 40th anniversary program in memory of Chin's death.
In Chinese culture, especially Cantonese culture, which he was and I am, whether you're Buddhist or not, you're growing up showing respect to your ancestors by doing these ancestor offerings. And when you do that, you take 3 incense, you put it in this little pot, and then you put little offerings of gestures of love.
This painted offering commissioned by the American Citizens for Justice. The group still fighting, they demanded justice for Vincent Chin all those years ago.
The system had failed him horribly, and we need to know why it failed him so that we can have the context to protect people in the future.
One of the most important documentaries that's helped frame the Asian American experience, called Who Killed Vincent Chin, aired nationally on PBS in 1987, and it will be seen again on PBS June 20th. Detroit Public Television helped create the film that got a lot of national recognition. The filmmakers, Christine Choi and Renee Tajima Pena, talked with One Detroit about the making of the film, along with DPTV's executive producer of the project at the time, Juanita Anderson.
Detroit, it's got the reputation murder capital of the world. It's like, and I didn't even do it on purpose. I didn't walk up and shoot somebody.
Dip, 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 boom. Sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na.
The murder happened in 1982 in June. It was big news in the city of Detroit, particularly in light of the fact that Detroit was in a major recession at that time. The Japanese auto industry particularly was blamed for Detroit's woes.
The American auto industry and its army have targeted Japan as a major source of its problems.
We are being shot at and shot up by the Japanese, who have the most protectionist economy in the world. What some of those who hold up the specter of a trade war ignore is that we are already in the middle of such a war, but only the Japanese are shooting.
Chrysler ultimately took a bailout during that period. So the auto industry itself and Detroit economically, because so many people relied on the auto industry, was really in a bad time.
But many of their verbal bullets aimed at the Japanese government and car makers have strayed off course and are hitting home instead.
Vincent Chin's death attracted a lot of press attention, particularly in light of the fact that he was Asian American and there were auto workers who were implicated in his killing.
I remember getting this mailing in snail mail. This young man named Vincent Chin had been beaten to death with a baseball bat by 2 auto workers, Ron Ebens and Mike Nitz. And at this time, they had pleaded guilty in state court to manslaughter, and they would serve no time in jail. And the local Asian American community, particularly the Chinese American community, was really up in arms. And so they wanted people all over the country in different Asian American communities to know about it.
Justice for Vincent Chin! Justice for Vincent Chin!
The 11:30 rally began with a list of speakers nearly a page long waiting to add their personal support and that of many organizations to the cause of justice for Vincent Chin.
We ask that all of you who have been so supportive on the struggle for justice
really became clear that this was much bigger than a local story. I just felt that this was a national story that deserved to be developed.
I think anybody who takes the time to go over the facts of this case and to read what people who were witnesses there, anybody who takes the time to look at that, I think, can only conclude that there was racial motivation in this killing.
As the Attorney General's office began to investigate, we realized that there was the potential of it being the first civil rights case involving Asian Americans, which made it an even bigger national story.
Neitz and Ebens were both charged with killing Vincent Chin. I spoke with some of his neighbors, asked for reaction.
They're really good people, and it could happen to anybody. You know, it could happen.
As there was this tremendous surge in news coverage, particularly in Detroit, but also nationally, there was very little effort to get the perspectives of the Asian American community outside of press conferences or the protests that were covered. Nobody really attempted to talk to members of the Asian American community or Vincent Chin's family at all.
So the Vincent Chin film was an idea until Detroit Public TV got involved. Bob Larson was the president of Detroit Public TV. Juanita shopped the idea to Bob. He wanted to, take it on. They were local in Detroit. They knew all about the case. And they said, yeah, let's do it. It was kind of like a dream come true.
Southern sun, riding high. When the night's warm and dry.
The Corporation for Public Broadcasting had a growing track record, I should say, of funding Black and brown and indigenous people for cultural affairs programs, but something that was a contemporary, what they considered a public affairs social issue. They had not really funded people of color, and certainly not women. So what happened was our proposal was put aside to see if they could find us a mentor in a new minority mentorship program that they were developing. Now, mind you, one of us had a degree in journalism from the University of Michigan, a second person had attended Harvard, a third had attended Columbia. All of us had done work before that had made it to national television in one way, shape, or form. So, it was sort of peculiar to us that our credentials were being questioned.
So CPB assigned a story consultant, white boy from WGBH, Boston, to supervise me, to quote, objectivity. Can you believe this?
And he was supposed to be kind of like our overseer. And Bob and Juanita said, don't worry, we'll take care of him. You guys just make the film. They just believed that, if you have a vision for a film, a filmmaker has to be free to pursue that vision. So we were a very small crew. There was Chris and I, Nancy Tong, our associate producer, and camera person, sometimes an assistant camera, but generally just a sound person as well, and we just all worked as one unit. And Nancy and I did all of the interviews.
Đi sang cái phố này hơi ba đôi mất ta có mà má hồi mới gọi less time cái tuổi hào như vậy con ngồi được ngồi dưới thao và ngồi ngầm trông như vậy nó khổ và không phải thêm cô vào.
Next thing I know, while the other girls out dancing, we hear boom, 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 you know, and we run to the stage to see what's happening. She's coming off the stage. You know, we go, what's up? And we look out, and I see guys are fighting out there in the club.
What if we'd have had an accident prior to it? What if we'd have went to the ball game? And there was 10,000 what ifs I've asked myself. And it's just like this was preordained to be, I guess. It just happened.
One of the things about documentary in general, and I think successful documentaries, is that the producers and directors have to build trust. Whoever's doing the interviewing has to build a sense of trust and maintain that trust with their subject, whether they're protagonists, antagonists, or what.
I was talking to Jimmy on my left, Vincent was on my right.
And Renee was really tremendous at doing that.
And that's when I turned and saw who Vincent was talking to, a man I later found out was Ronald Evans. And I put my hand on Vincent's arm to kind of calm him down.
I came around the bar, and all I saw was that Mr. Evans was yelling at Vincent Chin. And the next thing you know, Vincent got up, walked around, and hit Mr. Evans.
And he come around and sucker punched me. And that was the start of it all, right there.
She had a sense of integrity. She would ask the hard questions, but very calmly. I mean, it's part of the demeanor. You're eliciting these stories. But one of the techniques that she used that became very powerful was really simply listening. So you ask a question.
Well, I often wondered who the ACJ was, because every time a different program came on, a different month of the year came up, there was a different president.
It gets answered, and you wait and see if there's more. And sure enough, there's more.
Parading Mrs. Chin around the country or whatever.
I personally think that a lot of them used it for their own vehicle just to get ahead. Secondly, they used it to promote the Asian American and their alleged plight in this country, which I am not aware of that they have a plight, because I know very few Asians, very few, and the ones that I do know have always been really nice people. And in fact, my daughter used to help an Asian kid at school.
Getting him on camera was so important. It was like if you're a journalist or a filmmaker, you want to talk to people who are directly involved, but in this kind of case, I mean, Ron Evans was like at the center of the story, or one of the people at the center of the story. So I wanted to talk to him.
Well, to be quite honest, I expected to go to jail. I pleaded guilty to manslaughter on that. I did just like anybody else. I went to take my licks because I thought sure I would go to jail.
And one older guy was checking the young guy's head, because blood was running down his face. And went over to see if they needed any help. They said they needed some help, and they was going to offer me $20 to catch these Chinese guys that they got into it with. So we got into their car.
Pretty quickly, I thought it would be sort of like a Rashomon kind of story. It's this idea that in Rashomon, there was a rape in the forest, and you have all these witnesses, but they all interpret what they saw in a different way. And I thought in a hate crime, particularly in this case, if you listen to the different witnesses, it was very similar. They might have been in the fancy pants, or they might have been with Ron and Mike as they looked for Vincent, or could have been with Vincent as he, left the fancy pants. People might have been witnesses at the McDonald's when Vincent was being beaten to death by Ron and Mike. People had a different interpretation of what was going on inside the heads of Ron and Mike and Vincent. And specifically, was it an act of racial animus? Was it a hate crime?
I never even got a chance to stand up. Never seen it coming. And that's the way the whole thing started.
I identified myself as a police officer. I showed them a badge and an ID card. I had my weapon drawn,
I asked him to drop the baseball bat.
He hesitated, at which time he eventually dropped the baseball bat. But at that particular time, the damage had been done.
When we pulled up, we found there was an Oriental gentleman. His skull was obviously fractured. There was brains laying on the street. And Chin was obviously in a fatal condition. He wasn't dead yet. He was semi-conscious, but from my experience of being on the street for so long, the man was a goner.
The structure of Who Killed Vincent Chin is definitely non-linear. It is, I would say, it is rather experimental. I would say almost like experimental music, okay? Like Laurie Anderson, like avant-garde. Why? You play a note, then you play the same note second time, then you play the same note, ding, ding, ding. Okay, it's that kind of structure. Every time it's adding new information after you're repeating the old information.
To change your image of Asian people, our image of passiveness, able to sit, just do nothing, just accept whatever is coming to us. We decide it's a time to stand up for our rights.
I don't think there is such a thing called objectivity. Journalism stresses objectivity, but emotion is not objective, very subjective. What are the emotions? Sadness, happiness, despair, terrified, Film is composed of emotion. Once you're able to reach the emotion of your spectator, then logic will come through. It doesn't go other way, not the logic first. Once you have logic, there is no emotion, and it would not be very successful. What I learned about Vincent Chin is, every time I screen the film, I never seen anyone stood up and leaving the room. Because every single minute is emotional.
It seems Mrs. Chin is having some difficulties speaking. I think what she had said at the beginning was the court failed the first time. It seemed like the second time the court fails again to speak. Maybe we'll field questions.
I would hope people use that footage as a historic document and young filmmakers will take it and create something new, because things have changed. History has changed. I mean, I think that we can't look at the Vincent Chin case through the same lens as the 1980s. We have to look at it through 2022, or in 10 years, in 2030, like how things have changed.
Please, I want everybody tell the government do not to drop this case. I want justice for Vincent.
When Ho Lee case was accused as spy, and I made a short film about him, and I went to interview his lawyer. He thanked me. He said, "Because of your film, I became a criminal lawyer." That's really satisfying to hear. That something that good things, actually come out of it.
Do you think this trial would have occurred had not your group and other Asian Americans gotten involved and brought pressure to bear here and around the country?
I don't think any civil rights trial occurs unless there's pressure.
All of us, people of color, there's still issues with racial profiling. There's still issues with scapegoating. There are issues clearly of the justice system. And I think that we have a responsibility to each other to know each other's history.
Starting June 16th, a 4-day series of Vincent Chin 40th Remembrance and Rededication events will be taking place in Detroit and online. For more information on this and all of our arts and culture stories, go to our website at onedetroitpbs.org. That's going to do it for tonight, but I'll leave you with the smooth sounds of lyricist Frankie P. Enjoy, and I'll see you next Monday.
Listen, Holly, if you hear me, maybe I'm not loud enough. Read between the lines if you think about it hard enough. Disconnect, cause homie, you not charging up. I'm not a threat. They told me I'm
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program provided in part by the Kresge Foundation, the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV. From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Gregory Haynes and Richard Sonenklar. Nissan Foundation. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.